if you're just typing names into Ancestry and looking at the results, you're probably missing the stuff you're looking for. Today, Jim and Michael will help you to up your game with netting names. Oh, excuse me, with netting all the names you need. And if you are just finding your Revolutionary War pension, ancestors pension, and you're having a party, you are probably missing out on a lot, according to our special guest today, Craig R. Scott, CG FUGA, FUGA. And we'll explain what all those letters mean. They're kind of cool, they're kind of important, but not so much, says Craig. Hi, my name is Shamele, and I'd like to welcome you to Genealogy Quick Start today. How are you doing? Did you know that we are on YouTube, probably watching on YouTube? Did you know that we are also on Facebook? And we are a show on PhillyCam, which is our TV home. If you are a proud member of a genealogy group, let us know that group. And of course, announce yourself today. We love to know where you are. That I'd love to announce you. Definitely put where you are watching from today. And again, we love to hear about genealogy groups. Genealogy groups are the lifeblood of this thing that we are doing. So let me bring on my friends, my buddies, before I put on columnist and editor, Jim Beidler. Genealogy tip of the day, Michael John Neill. Hello. Are we showing the tops of our heads?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
So, guys, I love this netting all the names you need. Like, I need all of them. But, we're probably going to focus on, the top sites like Ancestry and Family Search. But there's so many of them out there that you're going to provide tips on how to use, across all these sites. What are some of your go-to, like something that's in your top 5 sites when you're on the hunt for somebody? What do you go to besides, say, Family Search, Ancestry, or even My Heritage?
Well, one of mine is called GeoGen, and of course, it's going to involve Germans, right? And what it is they took the German national phone book, das Telefonbuch .de, and they put it by the modern. Put the surnames by the modern German equivalent of counties, so that you zap a surname in and it'll come back with a map of where that surname is found, and especially if it's obviously a less common surname, it can hone you in on just a few of these places to look for your German immigrant ancestors.
And what's the name of that site again?
It's GeoGen. I'm going to have to get you a full URL for the notes afterwards. So.
Yes, and do you have access to the comments?
I do.
Oh, okay. When you find it, you go pop it into the comments.
I will pop it in. Well, I'll put it in the private chat, and you can move it to the comments. So.
Fantastic, yeah. Michael. Okay. What's one of your top 5 go-to besides Ancestry, Family Search, or My Heritage?
Well, the difficulty with answering this question is it depends on the geography of where your ancestors live. So I'm going to say what I've been using a lot lately has been the Library of Virginia, their Chancery Court records. They're online. There's a good index to those. If you've got Virginia people who were here before 1850 or there before 1850, that's something you definitely want to check out because there's a great massive quantity of records there, great digital images. The indexes are pretty comprehensive in terms of names, and it's something you want to check out.
Fantastic. If you can do the same as well, either put that into the comments or the private chat and I'll move it over for everyone. Let's see, who do we have here so far? Let's see. Hello, Cassie. Cassie, you are first. You are number 1 today from Cleveland, Ohio. Are you one of Dr. Debbie's? And Jenny, how are you, Jenny? And Tammy, hello, ATL. Welcome, welcome. And Cassie says she's one of Dr. Debbie's. Hello, Denise. Welcome from Amsterdam. Nice to have you guys. So anyone who has not announced, please announce. And there you are, Wayne and Gracie. And I was wondering where you guys were. Hello, Quint, another one of Dr. Debbie's. I'm trying to get Dr. Debbie on here soon, so you guys will be very excited to see her. So you guys ready for the quick start? What are we doing today? We are doing netting all the names you need. And if you're wondering who's creating all these great titles, it is former columnist or Jim always. Jim sets us up.
I let Michael do the hard work, and then I come up with the headline for it. So.
That's a metaphor for your life.
It is. It is.
So what does this mean? Netting all the names you need.
Well, I'll give you the 30-second comment. Oh, well, maybe Michael. No, you confused me there. So, I mean, to me, I've always maintained that you don't want to. Well, one spelling of a surname is not a hill you want to die on. And you should always be looking at a surname as a set of variations, and determining what's inside the Venn diagram of those variations, and what's outside can be very helpful to you, because you don't want your haystack to be so small that you don't find, especially in indexed material, that individual, but you can't make it so broad that the haystack's so big that you can't do anything about it. So what's Michael saying? Venn diagram.
Venn diagram.
What does that mean, Michael?
I do miss, Michael, when you used to use your little stick figures as illustrations on Facebook. I don't see those anymore. So.
I'll have
wait
to
a minute. Michael has stick figures.
Let's not get sidetracked. We're gonna stay focused today, because as part of a good research strategy, aside from watching all those variant names, is to try to stay focused as possible and be judicious in terms of what rabbit holes you do and do not go down. And we're going to bypass that rabbit hole today to model good behavior.
All right, let's move on to step one. Michael insists. So step one for netting all the names you need is learn the website search option. So how on earth do you do that?
Well, the quick way, if they have it, is to look at the frequently asked questions page, or more about page. In terms of some of the things that were popping up on some of the screens later, really what I did was I went to Google and typed in search options, or Wildcards, Ancestry.com, or Wildcards, whatever site.com, if you have trouble finding the frequently asked questions page. Because for the big sites, there'll be a page or a blog post or what have you describing what wildcards they facilitate or allow to be used, and very generic ways on how to use those. The one thing that I would also suggest to people: practice, do trial and error, experiment with these things to get a feel. You can read it, and depending upon your other world experience, your other job, but not other world in that sense, your previous experiences, you may be very capable of using wildcards and not need a lot of guidance.
So we don't even know what wildcards are yet, Michael. We're just talking about search options.
Search options.
Well, you gave us one really good way to do that, and one was to search about search options. And, I'm lazy, and I like your second option, which is to... Did it come up? Where is it? I like your second option, which is within the website. Like I think this is Ancestry, right? And it'll show you like different options. Talk about those.
These are the main options. There's others we're going to talk about later, but there's the exact search where it looks for exactly what you type in. And normally you don't want to do that unless you're overwhelmed with the other options.
Like John Smith.
Smith, and because usually Smith gets spelled right. There's exceptions to that, and keep Jim's German metaphor going. They could be Schmidt and things of that type. But Smith and Jones get spelled right. But sounds like will catch, and this is on Ancestry and most sites that support this, names that have a similar sound. And sometimes they program those into the system, which names are going to match other names. Similar, sometimes those are names that have, and again, this varies from one site to another, how these are implemented. Similar are names maybe also kind of may sound like, but have similar meaning, may not quite sound alike, but are similar names for one reason or another. And I know that's a vague definition, but a lot of these things come, especially in those first two options there, come down to programmer preference. Soundex, which we'll also talk about, that's a specific, it's also based on the sounds, hence the name Soundex, but it's a very more specific process in terms of what results you're going to get, again, based on the sounds.
Yes, you gave us like this nice tree that's showing 3 different types of searches. So can you go through, you were talking about wildcard. Now you can be wild and talk about wildcards, Michael.
The wildcards, I thought we had an image, I must have bypassed it, that explained what the wildcards are. There's the asterisk, which is above the 8 on your keypad. When you put an asterisk in play, the wildcards are typically asterisk and question marks at most sites. Asterisk is usually a variable number of letters can be in place of the asterisk, from no letter to up to 3 or 4 or 5, depending upon the site. The question mark is, and you should know where that's on your keyboard. If you don't, deal with that before you do any searches. The question mark is usually just one limited character. So you can use those for some of the names that we'll have some examples here in a second. I usually put wildcards in place of where the vowels are a good place to put those, because in some names the vowels can change depending upon how it's spelled. So like my last name.
So mostly a wildcard search is just using an asterisk or a question mark in the place of characters.
In place of characters that create different variants.
So talk about Soundex. That's that kind of thing we used to have to use before, like back in the day, to find people in the census, right?
Right. The Soundex is a specific algorithm, and it catches names that sound like the name that you put in the box. It works better for English and German names than it does for names that are Eastern European in origin. But the first letter, it uses the first letter of the name, vowel or consonant, and then after that, it ignores vowels and W, H, and Y, and it uses the next 3 consonant sounds in the name. We're going to try to stay brief and not do a whole hour and a half lecture on Soundex. But it's that first letter has to be the same, and then the name would have the next 3 same consonant sounds in that name. And that's the Soundex was developed for the 1880 census and some other things. And that's specific. That's different from sounds like and similar. Sounds like is a broader search than Soundex, and similar is also broader. And again, how a different site implements that can vary. But I know Soundex and sounds like sound similar. But
they do, but I get it.
They will give you some of the same names. The best thing is just some trial and error to see what works for you. As we said before, Soundex works best for English and Germanic names. Other ethnic names from other linguistic backgrounds, you're probably going to want to start, if an exact doesn't do it for you, you would want to start with that sounds like or similar, because it will catch those names. And we'll have an example in the list of a name where that is a better approach to use.
Okay, so we've checked out these websites, either looked internally on the website or we've Googled, search options for that site and took a look at those.
And one last quick thing before we go to step 2. I would encourage people to practice. If it's a site you've never used before you start looking for your dead people of interest, I know you're. Oh, sorry, forgot. Didn't know there was going to be a quiz at the end.
He just won. You can tell the educator in him is just roaring to get out. You got to practice.
You got
One more thing.
Practice, yes.
Step 2 is to practice. Jim, don't say anything. Practice. Woo! Different
No,
search
but
options.
before you get to looking for, I know everybody wants to find their person, but if you're unfamiliar with how these things work, or you haven't used them on this site, do some trial and error.
That's golden. That's golden, Michael. Yeah. Use it on somebody who you know where they should be,
there.
and
Right.
see if you actually find them. Yeah.
Right. Use these tricks, use these techniques, use these options, and say, you already found your Johannes Beidler, and you want to find him using the wild cards or using these other options. Try the question marks, try the asterisk, see if you can still find him using these approaches, and that'll help get your skills a little better if you're concerned about that. But in this illustration, there's different wild cards because they serve different purposes. Sometimes one works better than others. The question mark, which is for a single character, the example here is the name Kyle, and normally the way I'm looking for that, it's K-I or K-Y-L-E. If I use the question mark, it'll catch those two most common spellings. It'll get kale, if you want to eat kale or whatever. It'll get
I love
K-O-L-E.
kale.
Well, you can
Not too
have
much,
it.
though.
If I find it, I'll give it to you. But the question mark will not get castle. And if you think about it for a second, castle's not a reasonable variant for Kyle. And the question mark won't give me that. The asterisk, which is the one down below, where you can have a varying number of letters, and we use Goldenstein for that. Any place the asterisk appears, then could be no letter, or could be up to 3 or 5 or more, depending upon the programmer preference of the website. But, I like it. The third one there, then it gets the IE, the EI. If the vowels are left out, or if it's a U for some strange reason, it'll pull all those up. But those are the two main ones that are used.
Stanford and Stand, and sometimes it's Standford, and so that asterisk would pull that up.
Right, exactly, because there's just one letter. You could just put that in there, and there could be a D in there, or there could not be a D in there, and it would pull all those up.
This was another practice that you had put up.
This is at Family Search, and at Family Search, you don't have the number of options that you do at Ancestry. You either have exact or you don't. And when it comes up, it's unchecked. Like, why do I keep pointing at that? I'll do it again. It's unchecked like it is in the illustration. And when it's unchecked, it will get things that sound similar, have similar meaning sometimes, and other things that Family Search has decided should be in that list of results. If you want it to search exactly, then you want to check that box. I also check that box because you can use wildcards at Family Search. I check the box if I'm going to use any of the wildcards.
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure how much difference it makes, but I just do that as a matter of course. If I'm going to use wildcards, I'll click that box to make it an exact search.
Yeah, I would think wildcard would be the opposite of exact, but you're saying that's the perfect time to do that on Family Search.
It will do exactly what you've told the wildcard to do, and keep in mind at Ancestry, I'm pretty sure you can't start a search with the asterisk. You have to give it a letter first. Some sites might allow you to put a wildcard before you put any characters. Some do not.
That's correct. That's correct as far as my knowledge, which is annoying sometimes because there's some names that the first letter is iffy, and it would be nice to be able to do that.
It would be. Let's get that changed. The Bidler Rule.
There are 2 sites that will allow you to do that.
Oh.
Missouri State Archives and Provincial Archives of New Brunswick. When you do a search there, you have an option for contains. It could contain those letters, but Family Search and Ancestry won't let you. They don't like containers, I guess. I don't know.
Now all I got to do is get some New Brunswick ancestors.
All right. While Beidler's searching for those New Brunswick ancestors, let's move on to step 3, which is to create a list of surname variants. I love creating lists of surname variants. Let's see, each of you seem to love it too because you both provided me with lists. So let's look at Michael's list first.
4 different names here, and these lists are not comprehensive, but I knew when I sent them Shamele would have some limit to how many names. So I threw up 4 or 5 for each one of these. For the Damas, you might wonder why there's a P at the end of that, but that's because sometimes a double S gets written kind of funky.
Yes.
Someone unknowingly transcribes it as a P. Now, we talked about Soundex. Soundex is, if I put in Damas, it's not going to catch Damop because there's a consonant in the first 3 consonants. There's a difference there. It also will not catch Demorse, which is a spelling that gets in there based on how it's pronounced. And Moss, since it has a different initial letter, it won't catch Moss if it gets written as Moss. Robidoux, this is a French-Canadian name. And we mentioned that Soundex isn't always perfect on names that aren't English or German. The X at the end of that, of course, in French, an X at the end of the name is just decorative. There's no sound to it.
Right.
And so, but a Soundex search, using the Soundex with a capital S option, Robidoux and the ones below it are not Soundex equivalent because that computer sees that X, and that computer thinks an X makes a noise. So because of that, a Soundex and Robidoux won't catch the others. The other reason
so I
for
love the list, and like you were saying, for base preferences, we only had a few, but you want to go crazy with them. I love this, Jim. What is this you have here? This master variant diagram.
This is the phonetische Namenkarta. Call it the PNK, which I created a few years ago to help people with German surnames and place names too, to try to figure out the methodology is figure out what it is in the present day, and then try to work backwards with German phonetics to come up with what are all the possible variants. And to use a short name that people can probably visualize, the name is Daub, D-A-U-B in the modern day. Well, historically, that D could also be a T or a TH. The A can also be an O. The U is always the same. And then the B can also be a P. So till you put all those together, you probably have about 15 different spelling variants that you want to look up. And also ones like D-A-U-B-E and T-A-U-B-E that are not phonetic equivalents because there are no silent letters in German. But once in a great while in English language records, they don't know that, of course, and they add that E. So this is a good technique for people.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. I love diagrams anyway.
The one thing to think about your wildcards, and that you can use the list, your list, or use Jim's chart as a punk. I'm going to call it the punk list instead of PNK. But think about where the letters are different. That's where you can put a wild card. Whether you want to use a star, question mark, depends upon how many letters there are. To address one question that I saw in the comments, Boolean searches are when you use ands and ors. That's when you're like at newspaper websites and digital text websites where you're searching for keywords in a document. That's when you're looking for 2 or 3 words in one document. Then you would use an and or an or. But in the sites that we're talking about, we're looking for names and it's structured differently. So we're not doing a Boolean search. Searching card catalogs, newspapers, that's where you do a Boolean search and use an and or an or as appropriate.
So that is step 3, is to go ahead and create that list of variants. Step 4 is then to determine your search strategy. So what does that mean?
Take that list of your variants, and like I got ahead of myself, think about where the differences are. So you determine which you want to use a wild card, you want to use a star or an asterisk. Do you want to use a Soundex search? Because a Soundex search for one name will catch a chunk of the other variants. That way you perform only the searches that you need to catch all those different variants. There could always be one you've not thought of. That's why you either want to do a wildcard or a Soundex. But you make that list, and then what I would do, if it's somebody you find quickly, I wouldn't make a chart. But if it's somebody you can't find in a few minutes or 5 minutes, whatever you think is reasonable, then make a chart of those different search options that you did. You spelled it this way and did a Soundex. You spelled it this way and did a sounds like. You use this kind of wild card. You use that kind of wild card. Keep track of them so you know which ones you did, because you're not going to remember all the ones you did, and the one you forgot is probably the one you're going to find successful.
That's probably it.
And you can't problem solve or troubleshoot if you don't keep track of what you've done either.
And I want to throw out there that we have an episode called Toning Your Research Muscles, done by Hollis Gentry. So check that out. There's a whole bunch of strategies in there. Yeah, she tones up those muscles for you. And you guys already talked about, testing out where someone's going to see what comes up, and just doing different tests. One thing she was talking about, when you're looking for African Americans, to put the word Negro or colored in first name or last name and see what comes up. So there's so many different strategies. So let's look at step 5 is then to evaluate your search results. Did you guys have any final words on netting all the names you need?
Go ahead, Jim. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to comment from the chat. Claire was saying about the H in German sometimes being unvoiced. I would call it unvoiced rather than silent. Really, I should have limited my remark about silent letters to E's. That's very common in English, and you don't find that in German. It's going to be pronounced. So. And there was one from Denise Michael that I'm not sure of. When you use the question mark and there's no letter there, will that show up what you want?
It should.
Okay.
It should. It goes back to programmer preference. If they force something to be in that spot, the best way I would, if you're really concerned about how it works exactly, type S question mark ITH and Smiths, or unless it's some different language, search for something has to be in there to see how it really works, and then try for the things you're not sure if they're in there or not. Because sometimes, especially some of the more detailed technical questions, are not always answered in the frequently asked questions page, because they're hitting at the main 90% of people, and oftentimes our troubles are in that other 10%. To be honest with you, so. It goes back to just try and experiment, because what works at one site might not work at another. The other thing I would suggest is keep some notes of what you did at Ancestry that worked.
Yes.
Family search, because
it's just like your main research log. Absolutely.
Right. Because there's things that you'll remember that matter to you that might not matter to anybody else because of how your brain.
Yes, document that negative research as well. Let's go through the steps for netting all the names you need. Step 1, learn the website search options. Step 2, practice the different search options. Why am I having a problem saying options? Step 3, create a list of all the surname variants. Step 4, determine your search strategies. Step 5 is then to evaluate your search results. So guys, thank you so much. That was fun. I feel netted. I feel stronger. I feel like I'm going to be able to find more ancestors thanks to you. So thank you, and we'll see you guys on the other side. All right, let's get ready for my buddy. This guy, you would think I've known him all my life, Mr. Craig R. Scott. I can't help but fuss at you, Craig. When I see you, just have that face that says, fuss at me. How are you?
That would be it. I'm fussable. Absolutely.
So, Craig, I ask all my special guests to tell us their 1 minute genealogy story, how you knew you were hooked.
When I was 14 or 15, I found a piece of brown Scott tartan, took that swatch to my mother and said, I want a Jack shirt. That's how long ago it was. And she said, sure, give me $60. And I said, what? And she said, yeah, I'd have to get the cloth from Scotland. And so I decided, well, I better prove my Scottish connection before I do anything, before I spend $60 I don't have. In those days, it was newspapers and aluminum cans. So I go to the archives, and the first day that I go to the archives, it was the 2nd of August, 1969. I touch a Civil War pension. It's my great grandfather. And in this pension, it says, I have known this man all of my life. He is my son, and it's signed by his father. And that same day, I touch a Revolutionary War pension because I couldn't read the microfilm, and neither could the archives technician. And so I got to touch, my first day in the National Archives, got to touch an original Revolutionary War pension, and I was hooked for life. Now, I need to tell you, I never got the Jack shirt, but I did get the blanket.
Oh, nice, nice, nice.
So
That's what I miss about being in person, is seeing you guys wearing your kilts. And I'm not going to ask you any questions beyond they look really nice on you guys.
Yeah,
Especially
well,
when
when
you
I
guys
lose
have
a little
those
bit of
nice
weight,
legs.
I'll start wearing it again.
Say that again.
When I lose about 50 more pounds, I'll start wearing it again.
You could do it. You could just get a bigger one. You got all that material. All right, let's get going with your quick start, which is beyond Revolutionary War pensions. I can't believe you got to touch like an original deal there.
I've actually done it twice. Had 2 opportunities to touch. Now, did I learn anything more from the original pension? No. But I got to touch the original pension.
But you got to touch it. I forgot we had some people come on. I have to say hi to them before we get going. Sorry. Who came in after? Did I say hi to Quint? I think I said hi to Quint. Hello, Bursley. How are you? Nice to see you coming back regularly. Hello, Claire. How are you? I think we said hello to everyone else. So glad to have you here. So Craig, are you ready to do this quick start beyond Revolutionary War pensions?
I'm always ready.
All right, this is true. Unfortunately, fortunately, in most cases, don't
Make
say
up your mind. Make up your mind what you want.
So step 1 is to learn about, or get the Revolutionary War pension and learn about additional Revolutionary War records. And so what types of other records? Because we think the service record, the pension record, and we're done.
Well, most people do the compiled military service records and the pension application files in the wrong order. You should do the pension first because it'll tell you what unit they're in. Then you can go get the compiled record. There's also the opportunity that they may not have a compiled record but have a pension, or they have a compiled record and don't have a pension. But what we're going to talk today about is get the pension, and then what do you do?
Okay.
And most people just read the pension.
And so this is you gave us a pension jacket to look at of the person we're going to talk about today. Where is he? There he is.
So this is
who is Hedgeman Triplet?
Hedgeman Triplet is a Revolutionary War soldier from Culpeper County, Virginia, who ends up in Franklin County, Kentucky. And based on just looking at this envelope here, we know that Hedgeman Triplet's wife either was single, or she predeceased him, or she did not apply for a pension.
How do you know that?
Because her name is not there. So what I'm going to look for is her name in the pension, but I have knowledge that she didn't apply for the pension, and I have knowledge that one of the reasons that she may not have applied for the pension is because she may have died before him. So there are several opportunities.
So are all the pensions available on Fold 3?
Well, all of the pensions that were put on the microfilm publications, of which there's a selected microfilm and the regular microfilm for pensions. There's 2 different sets. Those are all on full 3. There
Okay.
are other special acts that you can find in statutes at large and those kind of things that are not on full 3. People think that all the pensions are there. They're not, but a majority of them are.
The majority of them are, and the ones that aren't, you need to go to the National Archives to get them?
No, you need to go to statutes at large and see the act and then go to legislative affairs
Okay.
in the National Archives to do it. So there's steps in between.
There's some
But what
steps
you want to
in
do
between.
when you get this envelope full of paper, which is digital on full 3 now, you want to download it, print it off, sort it out by act, and it can contain more than one pension, because if there's a widow, her pension is in that envelope also. So
Okay.
two pensions, maybe 3, maybe 4 pensions, maybe in this envelope. You got to sort it all out, and then you ought to transcribe it.
Okay.
Because
Okay.
I know personally, I went 25 years thinking one thing, finally.
Oh yeah, you have that. Those, you're doing the Michael You're pushing forward. All right. So
No, it's not my embarrassing genealogy moment.
oh no. So let's move on to step. So let's move on to step 2,
The first thing
which is to search the pension ledger on Ancestry and Fold 3. We kind of have the same steps together. So let's show you that and tell us what we're looking at.
So this pension ledger that we're going to look for Hedgeman triplet is on Ancestry. And the reason that I chose Hedgeman to talk about is because if you look for Hedgeman triplet, you won't find it. If you look for triplet, you will, because if you'll put up the screen that shows the ledger, I can demonstrate why Hedgeman.
Look at the question marks in the front of that man there.
See that? You like that?
I like that.
Notice how it flows. Well, these ledgers are in record group 217, which are the Treasury records, and everything that we're going to talk about at this point in time is all in 217. It's all in the records of the accounting officers, and there's a finding aid for it, which is the records of the accounting officers of the Department of Treasury. And you'll see my name down at the bottom of that.
Yay!
When the government created the finding aid, they made it microfiche.
Okay.
They did not print a copy. So I went back and added 1,000 entries to it and undescribed stuff that weren't in the microfiche. And this is one of the favorite books I've ever authored. And a man by the name of Sherman wrote it, and then I added to it later.
So what is it that we get from this ledger once we come here? We're just supposed to just try to find him and just know
find
that this
ledger, find the ledger, and then go to the ledger, and I'll show you
okay.
what we can do. Next one. There it is. See how ugly this is?
Yes.
It is downright ugly. So you're going to have to take the digital image and blow it up and make it bigger and all that kind of stuff. See that big blob on the left-hand side about halfway down the page? Hedgeman's name is underneath that blob. That's why he's not indexed as Hedgeman triplet.
Okay.
So anyway, this has every March and September you could get your payment. So you get 2 payments a year every 6 months. But you could come in, and they marked on the ledger by quarter when you could come in. So there's a payment voucher that was created that the government held on to. The pension agent and pension agents were bankers for the most part. And the pension office was in a bank. And when you presented yourself to the bank with your Revolutionary War claim, which we'll see in a couple of minutes, you would in fact get paid. You get a receipt. The pension office would keep a receipt, and they'd keep a copy of the voucher, and then they'd forward quarterly the voucher to DC. All
right, so back up, Craig.
Yeah.
So we are going on to Ancestry and Fold 3 to get the index cards.
Not yet.
Okay, so we're still on Ancestry.
Go back to the picture of the ledger.
Okay.
And I just have one comment to make.
Okay.
And people move. They move between pension agencies, so this operates like a census. So instead of knowing every 10 years when somebody moves, you know every 6 months, plus or minus maybe 6 months, when they move. So it's really a neat tool if you know how to use it. So when you look at this, these are all vouchers that you can get to. These are difficult to get to because you have to do calculations and all that kind of stuff. But there's an easy way to get to the last or final payments, and that's on fold 3. So Hedgeman triplet has an index card on fold 3, which you're going to put up. There we go. So this, in the 1960s, the 1960s, the archives went and looked for all these last and final payments. And if they found them, they put an asterisk in the upper left-hand corner of the card. So you see the asterisk there? That means that there is a last payment for Hedgeman triplet. Notice it says Hedgeman. So that tells you that there is another ledger that he's probably on.
Because of this little asterisk there?
No, because of the name Hedgeman. Because remember when we looked, there was no Hedgeman.
There was no Hedgeman there.
Right. The asterisk means that they in fact found the last payment. Well,
Okay.
a last payment is the last time that the pension office sees the pensioner. It doesn't really contain much genealogical data, but it has the location data, dates, those kind of things in it. So you'd want to get that. And if you go to the next slide, you can, in these, you may find the Revolutionary War claim in either the last or final payment. And this is the pension certificate that they would take to the bank, the pension agency.
All right, you said they would take this to the bank to get
They take
paid?
it to the bank, or they would go to a courthouse and have the clerk make a facsimile so that someone with their power of attorney could go to the bank or the pension agency to get it. So the pension agent would transcribe the information off this Revolutionary War claim into the voucher. This Revolutionary War claim is the authority granted by the government for a person to get a pension. First, there's law. In order to, this proves, and see that 7 June 1832, that's the law that he's getting a pension under.
Okay.
Yep, 7 June 1832. So this means that he was basically not a Continental, and he wasn't a Continental. He became an officer eventually in the Virginia militia. But
yeah, it says he was a lieutenant in the Army of the Revolution.
Right. But that
and this $320 was given how often? Per year.
Annum.
Gotcha. Of his natural life. Nice.
Yep.
Nice.
But that's what the Act of 1832 did.
So these find this, what you're showing us now, this is all on fold 3?
No, not yet. For Delaware and Georgia it is, but they're fixing it so that those will eventually all show up on fold 3. Otherwise, in fact, if you were to go to DC right now, you couldn't get to them because they're digitizing them. But Delaware and Georgia are there.
Delaware and Georgia are there, and they're just in the process of adding them. Do they have a date when they believe they'll all have?
And they never do that because they'll always be caught short. And it's not their fault. But the pension ledger has, with all those tick marks on it, the payment vouchers other than the last and final you can get, because they're not digitizing all those others. They're only digitizing the last one.
The final payments.
Because the last or final. Last means it's the last time they saw the pensioner. Final is when the pensioner's dead and his family, his heirs, come in to get the money. So let's go to the next card.
Okay.
So this is Hedgeman triplet. Notice the ... underneath the hedge. They figured out it was Hedgeman. But notice what's different about this card. It says final payment instead of last payment, and there's no asterisk, which means in the 1960s, the archives couldn't find this pension record, this payment voucher. But we do have a date of death, and we notice the payment is in 1839. That's 2 years after he died, or
so family
after he died. So family's coming in.
Yeah.
So how do you find this when the archives couldn't find it? So about 2/3 of those they couldn't find are in a series of records known as settled accounts of 6 April 1838. And I thought that was so important that I wrote a book about them.
Oh, where's that book? Let's see.
It's called The Lost Pension Settled Accounts of 6 April 1838. And this is the revised edition, because when I first did it in 1997, they then immediately flat filed all the records and ruined the finding aid from the perspective of you're actually being able to get to them without a crosswalk. And they weren't available for about a year. But anyway, so in a few years back, I revised it. I spent like 7 months in Wedowee, Alabama, all by myself, and I went and redid this book. And here we see Hedgeman Triplet has 3 entries, and the CO stands for children of. So these are Hedgeman Triplet's children coming in to pick up the remaining portion of his pension. Now, let me tell you something about Hedgeman Triplet's pension before we go any further.
Okay.
In his pension, it says that I have 8 children. And it mentions one of them, Polly Clements. It doesn't mention the other 7. This could be my family. It's not. But I mean, you know how the rules go when it comes to this kind of stuff. So anyway, so in the pension, there's one person, Polly Clements. There is no mention of any of the other people. There's also no mention of his wife. And it's evident his wife is predeceased. But anyway, so in looking at this final payment, you have to look at 3 of them in the settled accounts book, the finding aid to those. You have to get those 3. Now, those are available. They aren't, because they're not considered last and final payments, even though they are. So when you go and get them, you see all 8 children mentioned. And where they live. So go ahead and put the.
So this is which step? This is locating the final payment. So Craig, this is why I fuss at Craig all the time. If you guys haven't noticed, we have searched Ancestry and Fold 3 to get what we could to get those index cards. We found the payment vouchers, and now we are locating the final payment. Like those vouchers aren't it. You got to get the final payment.
Well,
the
final payment is a voucher. It's just a special kind of voucher. It's a
special voucher.
Okay. So I mean, it's not special. It just happens to be the one.
It's not special like you, is it?
Yeah. So anyway, this final payment and possibly the last payment is the last entry on the pension ledger that we looked at in the very beginning. So, but this is the paperwork that comes with it. And when it's a last payment, it doesn't have family in it, but if it's a final payment, it does. So when we look at this document, we see that he dies on 22 September 1837. Well, we sort of knew that from the index card, but that's a secondary record. This is a primary record.
Yeah, they said September.
Yeah. We know he's in Franklin County, Kentucky. We know he left no widow, and he has the following heirs.
Yeah.
William Triplet in Franklin County, Hedgeman Triplet in Franklin County, Nancy Poe, wife of Edmund Poe in Franklin County, Kentucky, Elizabeth Grant, wife of Thomas Grant, also in Franklin County, Kentucky, George W. Triplet in Davis County, Kentucky, Polly Clements, who we knew about, she's the wife of Alan Clements, Lucy Palmer, who predeceased Hedgeman Triplet. So what we know are the grandchildren of Hedgeman Triplet that are the children of Lucy Palmer, Elizabeth, Nancy, Phoebe, Thomas, and Polly Palmer, all of Indiana. Then we also have William Palmer of Shelby County, Kentucky, John Palmer of Shelby County, Kentucky, Richard Palmer of Shelby County, Hedgeman Palmer of Louisiana. You know, putting Hedgeman Palmer with the rest of these Palmers when they're in Kentucky and he's in Louisiana might be a difficult task. And then Mildred Wright, the wife of Abner Wright, who lives in Illinois. So you can go back to that slide. So if I spoke too fast.
You did.
I always speak too fast. If you have issues with trying to keep track of what we talked about, I decided, because I'm always answering questions about the subject, to write I'll call it a pamphlet. It's only like 78 pages or something like that. Maybe it's more. I can't remember actually. On understanding Revolutionary War and invalid pension ledgers, 1818 to 1872, and the pension payment vouchers which they represent. So this is 5 case studies that deal with this subject for the Revolution and the War of 1812, so that you can hone in on better, and it's got better pieces.
No, I love that. How long has that book been out?
I don't know, a year or two.
Oh, okay. I thought this was recent. Okay, I gotta get that one. No, I love this. So let's run through, and then the final step after you get the final payment, and we did go through all the documents, right? Yes, we did.
If you don't write it down, it doesn't count.
That's true.
If you don't create a proof summary, a report, or even for yourself, if you don't write it down, if you plug it into your genealogy database, that doesn't count. What counts is writing it down. And sometimes in a situation like this, there's an article there for somebody.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because this is just full of this family. I mean, you know, if I wasn't the kind of guy I am in using it all the time, you know, I'd probably write something for Aunt Searchin' News or something like that on this Kentucky family that came out of Virginia and where they were and all that kind of stuff. I mean, editors are always looking for stuff.
They are always looking for stuff, and we are here to tell our own stories. That's why we're here, right? And so, Craig, you mentioned proof summary, and so that brings up, like, very briefly, how does one become a certified genealogist?
Very briefly?
Yes, like what is it?
Well, my recommendation is that you go to the BCG website and read up on what it takes to become a certified genealogist.
Fantastic.
I also recommend that you not get on the clock until everything is done. Except there are some things that are helpful to you while you're on the clock that you can't get to unless you're on the clock. There's all kinds of stuff out there. I'm now in my 25th plus year of being certified. So for me, it's just a way of life for me. And I recommend either certification or accreditation for everybody. But truly, it's I did it for me. I didn't do it for anybody else. I mean, I wanted to prove to myself that I could do it. I think that's really how most people look at it. I don't think it doesn't give you head of the line privileges anywhere. So
speaking of head of the line, I just want to congratulate you on becoming a fellow of the Utah Genealogical Association. And fellows are like really big. They're honorary given for good works. And so I want to thank you for your many good works, especially with me, Craig. You have been 100,000% a supporter of me. And I want to thank you for that. And I want to repeat the steps that we kind of went through today for going beyond Revolutionary War pensions. If you guys have questions for Craig, put them in the comments. Anything. He loves questions. So step 1 is to learn about additional Revolutionary War records. Step 2 is to search the pension ledger on Ancestry. Step 3 is to search Fold 3's index cards. Step 4 is to find the payment vouchers. Step 5 is to locate the final payments. And step 3 is to document your findings. Tell your story, especially if you have a Revolutionary War ancestor. And we're about to come on to the 250th celebration of the Revolutionary War coming up. And I know New Jersey's getting ready, 2026, I believe. So let's bring my buddies back. I don't know. Do you guys have any Revolutionary War ancestors, Jim and Michael?
Does a bear take a crap in the woods? I have about 2 dozen. Thank you.
Okay.
I have maybe 2, but 5/8 of my people were not here before 1850. So
okay.
Yeah. There's a bit of a paucity of Ostfriesians in the Revolutionary War.
Well,
all right, guys, let's do our question of the day, and we definitely want to hear from our audience as well. What is your most embarrassing genealogy oversight? And Craig started this. So Craig, tell us what your most, and we have limited time.
So for me, embarrassing is embarrassing to myself, not embarrassing to somebody else. You know what I mean? So my father told me very early on who all of my Civil War ancestors were on his side of the family. And I have lots of Wisconsin folk, Walworth County, Wisconsin. And so I went and searched those people out. And Illinois also. My great-grandfather served in an Illinois regiment. My a lot of collaterals, Nyland's family, a lot of collaterals. And they were all over the place. So I researched them. And I have a picture of Newton Hawes Kingman, who is the captain of Company I, the 13th Wisconsin. And so because I have his picture, I researched him very heavily, his court martial after the war, his pension, all that kind of stuff. And I decided, well, I ought to write on Company I, the 13th, or at least write on the 13th. What would I do first to start? So I went and found the adjutant general's list of everybody in his company. And there was a corporal by the name of Benjamin Parrish. And he is my great-great-grandfather who served through the war and was in the Veteran Reserve Corps. And I found this out about 5 years ago. And you know me, I've been doing military research
for a long time.
More than 30 years. And I had not even gotten to my great-great-grandfather. True.
We're glad you did. Jim and Michael, biggest, most embarrassing genealogy oversight.
Well, I had found an abstract of an obituary for one of my immigrant ancestors, and I figured the abstract was all the information that I needed and never pursued the original newspaper. When I did pursue the original newspaper, it had buku more information.
Michael?
I think the thing that comes to mind is a ancestor died with no children. There was an intestate probate, and the administrator of it was a name I didn't recognize, and I just assumed it was some neighbor that he owed money to. Didn't bother to research him, and 20, 30 years later, it turned out the administrator dude was married to his niece, and I hadn't researched the sister's family that well. It was her son-in-law, and there it was. It was a relative all along. It never clicked.
Denise has one. This one's awful. My mother told me a photo was of her grandfather. I forwarded that to a man who was writing a history of German village the family came from. I later found out it wasn't her German grandfather, but her Virginia father-in-law.
Oops.
All right, guys, we are at the end here. Mine was that I had evidence. I had been looking for an ancestor who would have been during enslaved time, and I was looking for his marriage right after enslavement, and his name was William. And I should have looked under Bill, but eventually I did, and I found him. He was married 1865. He consummated it. But guys, Craig, thank you so much for being on the show. You're coming back, I know. Jim and Michael, you guys are always fabulous. And our guests, our viewers, thank you for watching. Everyone have a great day. Thank you. Bye. Craig, don't leave. Stay.
Craig, don't leave.